All right, so we're going to present these breakout reports. Ask for Stephanie and Christy to come up to present these. We will show all of the great work that has been done by asking everyone to take your seats, and then, all right, Christy and Stephanie, I see you guys making your way. At least it'll entertain me, so, yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody for your participation. I'm Stephanie. I've been introduced a few times today, so I won't say my title again, but thank you for participating in that. It's not very often that we get together as a group, and so we appreciate you sharing your ideas. This will be brief, but we thought we'd summarize. I couldn't delegate in my group, so I'm going to do it, but you'll hear from 4 of us, and I'll try and set the example by being brief. But we talked about communication, and there were 3 ideas that bubbled up at the end that I think some a little more complicated, some very simple. One suggestion was to USA Water Polo that when we send out our emails, clarity on who are they for, what is the content, do I need to forward this? Meaning, you know, the member alert, get a lot of those, who does it go to, more clarity there. If an email is sent to a zone chair, is it meant to be shared with the board? Is it meant to be shared with the clubs? So just give direction and some bullet points. So simplify that communication. The other items, well, this one came up, and I know that we did it a couple of years ago, but that one size doesn't fit all. And so for USA Membership Services, which would be Christy Sicard or myself, to try and make a visit to a zone board meeting to really understand the needs of that particular zone. The third idea was a suggestion to assign a role that isn't in our bylaws, is not official, but outreach, if you will, as a best practice. So one, not the zone chair, but a zone board member checks in, depending on how many clubs you have, once a month, once a quarter, once every 6 months. Collect the feedback, if it's something appropriate for the zone, share with the zone board. If it's something appropriate for USA Water Polo, that person also reaches out to USA Water Polo. So again, I really thought though that the clarity of emails and that falls to us quite a bit, and the appointment of this outreach person was a very good idea. So that was my group on communication. I'll turn it over. Christy, are you doing this or?
Miguel will be presenting.
Okay, Miguel.
Zone chair, Midwest, fastest growing zone.
All right, so our topic was communication. And the first item we discussed was someone brought up possibly bringing back the town hall meetings where reps from U.S. Water Polo came to the zones and just had meetings with members. How that would look in some of the bigger zones geographically, we didn't get into those details, but those did take place before, so that was one topic. The next one we spent a lot of time on had to do with the zone calendars, how they're maintained, and if there was a way to integrate them into one master calendar, what that could look like. Is that a good idea? Should we add additional events, maybe some non-sanctioned events, but because they're water polo events, how that would look, and how that impacts the community, also for certain dates, especially when you're dealing with age group and club that could affect ACT dates, SAT testing, holidays. The next thing we talked about is just networking. This came up yesterday in our zone chair meeting. Some sort of way that all the zone chairs could network. That got into talking about the board members, where we're in some sort of a message board, sharing things. I know we had a message board years ago, and that didn't go as well as we would have liked, but where we're communicating, sharing areas of interest, and going with that. The next thing we talk about social media, and then we've talked a lot about that, how that impacts just how we can use that better. One thing we're doing in our zone, this came up, was the standard email template, where we're kind of using that as a newsletter. Is there a formal one that can be sent out from, so it looks very official. And the last thing we talked about was the national team accessibility. Similar to if you go onto a Major League Baseball roster, it might have the players' Twitter accounts or something like that. Can we do that for our national team members if people want them to follow them or to get in touch with them? So that's number 2. Number 3 is okay.
I'm unsure if we stayed on topic, so I was questionable whether to delegate this to someone from the group, but I think we were talking about growth. We went into growth. I think we were supposed to talk about play, and then we got into the challenges of coaches and referees and recruiting them and having more of them, right? And that being an issue of growth. And we talked about this, and I'm sure it was a problem everywhere as the sport grows. Do we have enough referees? Do we have enough coaches to support the growth in a specific area? So we talked about that. Once that started talking, we talked about the challenge of getting full-time based on that, right, at all our facilities. U.S. Water Polo in about 2006 had a video, and this was discussed recently as well. That was a way to partner with water polo coaches and swim coaches to partner together, to work together. That was brought up again, and I think we'll try to produce a similar video like that again, just a way to help you guys in your zones to bridge the gap with the swim coaches and try to work a little more creatively with them. So, Cherie, if you're listening, that's something we'll be working on here soon. And then also we talked about working with on some sort of basic level of how do we get our coaches better, basic level certification that's in there, but navigating the fact of not creating so much of a barrier of entry for our coaches to become U.S. Water Polo coaches, but also provide them professional development and some sort of basic level of understanding of the game or water safety and things like that. And maybe that comes along with the first level of coaching that comes in. We talked a lot about Masters Water Polo and how engaging the Masters community can help trickle down into the coach and referee world. That's a great network for us to get more coaches and referees on the Masters level. That's a huge community. And then we talked about working with state associations who already have referee and coach requirements, and maybe U.S. Water would partner with those state associations on how to professionally develop the coaches and referees in those areas. But clearly, in terms of growth and trying to get more play, we need more coaches and we need more refs and we need them to be good. So that's a huge challenge. So how do we make that happen? Number 4.
So group 4. This one. We talked about
competitions, specifically leagues and tournaments. So I'm going to talk about the leagues. Our zone that I'm involved with, the SOPAC zone, we have a lot of athletes and a lot of teams. So we run a developmental league, and it's good for second tier, third tier teams. And in California, we have a couple really strong, high elite, top tier leagues. One is called the California Cup League, and one is the Ironman League, changed their name to the Futures League. Those leagues are very organized. They're convenient. They have a set schedule. It's slightly, expensive, but it's worth the cost. There's big prizes. There's rankings. There's seedings. There's top quality referees. We talked about the Northeast. Greenwich runs 2 leagues, fall and a spring league, each one for 3 months. And once a month, the teams come together for one play date each. So like, let's say the 12 and under boys play on a Sunday this month and on a Saturday the next month. And then at the conclusion of that season, they'll have a championship. They have an area called the Tri-State, so teams are traveling anywhere from 1 to 5 hours to compete. And they also have an in-house league, Greenwich does, where it's just kids from their own club before they even travel. We talked about also trying to get more younger kids, novice kids started at an earlier age to get them exposed to the sport. So we're talking about some tournaments and different levels now.
So we also talked about opportunities and how to tab tournaments or clubs so that you know more information maybe on the website, especially to reach those B and C level clubs or those new clubs that don't maybe want to or can play against the A level clubs. So how can you know more about their level of competition, what the skills that they want to work at, and get that on the information, get that on the websites now so that you can kind of see what else other teams have. So you can communicate with them and reach out to them. And then that would allow more, getting the breadth, the depth of players to have more opportunities. And another thing that we brought up was having kind of one-on-one opportunities where you get together with either 1 or 2 clubs, do a game, and then maybe a controlled scrimmage, and then some 6-on-5. And so you're building skills, but with some other players and competitions, so you can gain experience and knowledge from each other.
Thanks everybody for participating.
All right, now we're going to ask Mike Graff and Richard Estrigan to join us back here on stage as we get into bylaw review and ratification. And there'll be an opportunity for some questions pertaining just to bylaws. And then once that part is complete and we get later on, we'll have a general kind of Q&A where you can text in the questions to 657-215-8797. A number you'll all be repeating in your dreams, I'm sure.
Oh, that's mine, Mike. Thank you. Yeah.
So we have 2 official business items to take care of. One is some changes to the bylaws, which need to be ratified by the assembly. So everyone has, very proud of you, Richard. These were sent out 60 days ago or 56 days ago, very close to what we're shooting for in terms of giving everybody plenty of notice. Andy, I hope you're happy with that. Most of the changes, I would say, in the bylaws are for the Safe Sport initiative. We have needed to change the bylaws to comply with that. So, Richard, what do you want to do? Do you want to open for questions? There's in addition to Safe Sport, there's a normal language cleanup and a few other things, but nothing really that material.
So as Mike's indicated, I circulated to all of the zone chairs a clean version of the proposed new bylaws in draft form and a red line showing the changes from the current bylaws. The board approved those changes at its meeting yesterday, but the changes in Article 7, which have to do with the Board of Directors itself, have to be approved by the Zone Assembly in order to take effect. I believe that all of those changes in that section either are grammatical type changes, changing some language from the passive voice to the active voice, correcting typographical errors and that sort of thing. Or in the case of the provision regarding athlete directors, which is in section 7.7, there's just really a clarification of the procedure as to how you go about doing that in the event that we need to elect an athlete director between the time that you would normally elect the athlete AAC rep and alternate rep, which is at the end of each quad. We've had to do that a couple of times as the board has expanded, because as I think Jess mentioned earlier, under the Ted Stevens Amateur Athletic Act, we have to have at least 20% athletes on the board. So as the board size grows with non-athletes, we then need to elect a new athlete from time to time. So if people have questions regarding the changes to Article 7, I'd be happy to address them. Otherwise, I would propose that the Assembly approve the proposed amendments. Brad.
7-Eleven. Can you just give a practical example of 7-Eleven?
It's a convenience store at most gas stations. Any more questions?
Sorry, Richard.
The term limits?
I'm reading it in kind of legally.
All right, so so let me see if I can explain it. So what happens typically on our board as we've gotten new members is that the Nominating and Governance Committee can appoint new members to the board. They're either A directors or B directors, and then when the next time comes up for the election of that director, the Assembly has to vote the director in. So is term limits, right? Exactly. So, but in order to understand the term limit provision, you need to understand how directors come onto the board. So if you, did they get the chart of the directors? Chris, was the director chart included in the Assembly packet, do you know? Okay. So give me 1 minute to turn to something here. So I'll take myself as an example. The Nominating and Governance Committee asked me to join the board in October of 2010 as a B director. The next time that the B directors were elected was in January 2011, and I was elected at that point in time for a term which ended in January of 2015. So I served 3 months as a director before I was presented to the Assembly to be ratified. That period of time could be as much as almost 3 years, depending on when in the election cycle a new director is appointed to the board, because directors are elected for 4-year terms. So the way that the term limits work is you don't count that stub term that most directors serve when they're appointed by the Nominating and Governance Committee before they're first elected, because that's not a full term of office. Once they are elected for a full term of office, they serve a 4-year term. If they're elected again, they serve another 4-year term. If they're elected again, they serve another 4-year term, 3 consecutive full terms, and at the end of that 3rd term, with one exception that I'll get to in a moment, they are no longer eligible for service on the board until they've been off the board for at least 1 year. Once you're off the board for a year, it resets. The one exception to the 3-term limit is if you are elected as the chair of the board during your 3rd term, then you are permitted to serve a 4th term. But even under those circumstances, at the end of the fourth term, the chair would no longer be eligible and would be termed out.
Okay, so there isn't any like cardinal, like serve more than half or less than half of the appointment. It's just strictly a 4-year term, you're appointed after 2 months of the beginning of the 4-year term. You serve out more, one thing you serve your regular 3 more.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, if you're never elected as chair, in theory, you could serve 3 full terms, which would be 12 years, plus up to 3 years, 364 days if you happen to have been appointed to the board by the nominating and governance committee the day after the new term started. But that's in theory. I mean, that's in theory. I mean, pardon me?
If you chose to sit off a year, your clock would reset and potentially could go another 12.
Correct. If you're off for a year, then the clock resets and you could be up. You could serve once again for 3 full terms.
And so 7.11, the chair could potentially go 16 years.
4 full terms plus.
Take a year off and then do another 16 years.
Yes, if there's somebody who is brave enough,
Theoretically, you're correct.
brave enough, and foolish enough, and has thick enough skin to do that, that could happen. Any more questions? There are no substantive changes to Section 711 that are up for election. The only changes there were to change some language from passive to active voice, and to consistently use the term board for board of directors, because it was inconsistent in the prior draft of the bylaws. Those are the only changes in that section. There's nothing substantive that's been changed.
Andrew?
Page 20, 9.11.
I'm looking at, I'm sorry, what section?
9.11. Just a comment, not anything really that I expect action today, but just something to honor for the future, that the nominating governance committee shall consist of the chair and at least 2 other board members as selected by the chair.
Yeah.
Would it be reasonable or possible to consider having somebody on that governance committee who is not a member of the board? Somebody who is our representative of the membership, per se.
Well, first of all, anything is possible. But this section 9.11 is not a section that needs ratification. To be amended doesn't need ratification of the assembly. The board can on its own change that section if it chose to do so. The way the bylaws are constructed, the overarching theme is the board acts independently once it's elected, and the recourse to the membership occurs now when the membership either approves or doesn't approve individuals who have been nominated to the board by the nominating committee. So that's where the membership input comes, not at the stage where individuals are considered by the nominating and governance committee.
It's an idea, Andrew. Can you give me more explanation for why it'd be interesting?
I think right now it appears as if the board is to Richard's explanation, it very much is its own entity in of itself. With very little, if there's a new board member coming on, there's no input from the membership as to who those board members are. So just thinking that the organization, I can understand back in 2006, 2007 when the place was wrecked, but we're in a position now that it seems like allowing some membership input might be worthwhile.
Okay, understand. We do have an athlete director on that committee. But
On the governance,
yes,
nominating committee.
yeah, Jess is on that. Other questions, comments on the bylaws? Okay, You want to call the question?
So, I guess, as a member, I would move that the Assembly ratify the changes to Article 7 of the bylaws as presented. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much.
Okay, next order of business is election of directors. And the A directors are.
The A directors are up for election in this cycle. The B directors will be up for election